Hey welders, ready to upgrade your gear and save some serious dough in the process? The Miller Build with Blue Savings and Rebate Program has you covered. Find amazing deals and cashback rebates on a wide range of Miller products, from welders to plasma cutters and everything in between, all backed by our 3-year warranty. Don't let this opportunity pass you by. Take advantage of the Miller Build with Blue program now. Visit us online or stop by your nearest Miller distributor today to start saving.
Welcome back to another episode of the Strange Motion Way podcast. I am your host, Tim Strange, along with my hostess with the mostest,
Crash and Carrie Strange.
That's right. Carrie is just in the recliner laid up, had a little hospital stay with some broken ribs, bruised lung, and 4 pelvic fractures in different areas from a BMX race. So she's not on this podcast, but she is behind the scenes hitting some buttons on the computers for us, because we all know I'm just Ron Burgundy. So wish Carrie healing up good. It's good to have her home and out of the hospital finally. So this next one, we're continuing with our custom-based subjects. Owns many cool custom cars. We talk about that, but the thing we're promoting with him, he is the man behind, along with his family and his wife, the Custom Car Revival coming up in about a week and a half.
In Indianapolis.
And it's a really cool, traditional only, must be accepted, already sold out. But if you're in the Indianapolis area or driving distance and want to see some historic and traditional custom cars, check out this episode and make a trip to Indianapolis.
The Strange Motion Way podcast, brought to you by Royal Purple Synthetic Oils.
Royal Purple premium synthetic motor oils and high-performance chemicals have been designed to improve performance in all conditions and provide cleaner operation, better mileage, and decreased oil change frequency. That means less oil changes. With products available for your gasoline and diesel engines, Royal Purple is the obvious choice for your performance needs. Drive with Royal Purple, the synthetic expert.
Okay, here we are with another great custom car industry guest tonight on the Strange Motion Way podcast. I'm your host, Tim Strange. My hostess is a little laid up. We had a little accident, so she's just sitting in her recliner trying to help us with the technical stuff, because I'm pretty much just Ron Burgundy out here. I just get on here to talk. So tonight's guest is custom car lover, owner, and custom car promoter for the Custom Car Revival in Indianapolis. He's owned many amazing custom cars, built by great customizers, which some of these I call friends. So we're going to talk about them tonight too. I hear that you are such a traditional, and we'll talk about what traditional means, because you have a description of that even your underwear has white walls. So welcome tonight, Kevin Anderson from Indianapolis. How you doing?
Hey, great, Tim. Thanks so much for the opportunity to be here and spread the traditional custom gospel with other like-minded. You bet.
So we're going to start back a little bit. We'll get to the Custom Car Revival, which is an amazing show coming up in about a week and a half if this goes live when we were planning on it to go up. But first off, I'd like to get some information about how you grew up, how you got into custom cars. Were you a hot rodder, drag racer? Was your dad a car guy? How did you get into cars?
Well, great question. I survived high school and later Purdue University by doodling in the margin and drawing cars like most of us did, and just always was interested in that. My father wasn't necessarily a car guy. He was an outdoorsman. So fishing, hunting, we did that. But I always was kind of drawn to this component, probably more understandably now that you know of me, a little bit more drawn to the aesthetic as opposed to the mechanical part. So I, for instance, a few years ago, I found my old high school art yearbook, and every drawing of everything I did almost always included a car. I even drew a 1950 Mercury that looks like today the exact car I finished in 1992. I can guarantee you when I was in high school, I didn't even know what a Mercury was, So I've always been drawn to that. Of course, like most of us, built a lot of model cars, and at some point decided to throw the instructions away and take models apart and put pieces together to make new cars and models that, were not part of the diagram. So I've just been always drawn to that. And for me, it's more of an artistic fascination as it is really more speed. Believe me, I love speed. Who doesn't love speed? But the art component of it, or the artistic component, has always been more meaningful to me.
And I think that got a lot of people start as hot rod people, custom people. I just say hot rod and lump it all together.
Yeah.
But you used to go into every five and dime little store, and there was a row of models and Hot Wheels. Well, now it's a struggle to find. I mean, we have model cars at Walmart, like at Christmas time. They put them in the middle of the kiosk, and I usually buy a couple, just stick them on the shelf. And we struggle to get young people interested in hot rods and customs, but that's part of, phones and all that video game stuff, but they just don't sell models at every store. And I wish they would a little bit more. They still sell Hot Wheels. I was in the Walmart today trying to buy some Hot Wheels, but
yeah. And when I was building models in the 60s and 70s, I can assure you that my father didn't build plastic models, when he was a kid. So there's always a generational change that happens. It's hard for us to see because we have such a passion, about this. Both my boys have grown up, and my daughter have grown up knowing that their dad's a custom car nut. They've lived this. But they aren't drawn to build their own cars. That's okay. My oldest son just got back from a tremendous hike in upper Montana where it was still snowing. We saw pictures yesterday. That's not for me, but I admire that so much of him. So things changed in that regard, and the neat thing is to have fun with it. Let's not take it too seriously. I probably have as many hot rod buddies as I do custom car friends. I have friends that are passionate about other things, fishing and hunting and things, and none of that has any great romance for me, but it does for others, and that's okay. That's all right.
Yeah, I'm not much of I was when I was a kid. I was a hunter and fisher, all that stuff. But before I got my driver's license, then everything changed. Once I got my driver's license, I was going to car shows and drag races, of course, BMX races and everything. But I'm still not much of a fisherman. I don't. Yeah. If I could catch a fish every time I cast it out, I'd probably be okay. But I get bored really quick sitting around.
Yeah, so. I got bored with it. Yeah. But you can appreciate that what my father did, what our fathers did, they learned from their fathers. So there is speed and technology and the sophistication of the day are all very different, even from when we were kids to our children or our kids these days. So as long as you keep all good things in perspective and enjoy it, at the point that you get all stressed out about it, you didn't win a trophy, then you gotta take a chill pill and kind of relax and realize it's about the fun, it's about the people, it's not about a $12 plaque,
Yeah, I still go to shows sometimes. And I don't even take a car because I've never brought a car to your show, and I've been a few times because I remember the first time I was coming and I emailed you about the hotel, is there any left, and the link or whatever like that, and you're like, wait, what are you bringing? Because I don't think you have anything that fits in our rules, which we'll get to that later.
Right.
But there's so many rad people. I'll jump around a little bit, but like me and Chris Ryan, Chris, I mean,
sure.
you had the world famous poster printed of me and Chris Ryan that everybody still is stammering to get their copy of that poster. Right. Oh man, I don't know if I have one over there on my desk. I should have had that ready to show. I might show that when we're promoting this on social media and explain the story there. But to me, I've been a part of. I do drag race announcing, but that NHRA stuff. I do autocross stuff. I do a lot of stuff in the hot rod industry. But my heart is in custom cars.
Right.
And the custom people, that's what me and Chris Ryan always talk about. They're different than any other people in this industry in a good way. Like, I remember going back in the 90s to, the second to last or last Merc Deuce reunion. And I got to meet all the, I met Starbird when probably before I had my driver's license in Barris and stuff. But I hung out at the show and tried to talk to Bill Hines and realized how he really couldn't hear. And all those Hall of Fame guys, they're no egos. They'll help you with any questions. Of course, I've been to some of them guys shop and help because they're always looking for help. And I think you agree with that too, because you're a custom guy. We met at a custom show. I don't remember where we met, but custom people are just like the chillest people ever. I just love them.
Yeah, I think custom people, like hot rod people, have to have a tremendous amount of patience. You have to have a lot of perseverance. I'm not quitting. I'm going to see this through. I think to many, a custom car, much like a hot rod, but a custom car especially, is like adopting, going to the pound and getting a dog. You don't really know what you're getting. You think you know what you're getting, but you don't really know what you're getting until you get that dog moves in your house or into your life. So a custom car by nature, you can't buy it out of with a credit card. You have to build it. You have to have an idea, see it through. There are many custom builders that have great aptitude, but have no creativity. I'll just say it. They're great. There are people who have great creativity, but have no aptitude. I might be one of those. But customs are a combination of that. I used the analogy one time to an older gentleman who was questioning the subject of customs. And I said, I don't care what kind of music you like, country, rock, symphony, chamber, I don't care. If you listen to just one instrument in that piece of music, it may be pretty melodic, it may be a pretty kissing, you're like, okay, I hear the flute. But when you hear the flute and the strings and an upright bass, when you begin to piece all these things together, that individually really didn't work that well together. But when you put them all together, something really magical happens. It's an emotional thing. Music is an art that it touches you no matter what, your race, your gender, your background, what country you're from, it doesn't really matter. Music does that. Well, I think customs do the same thing because there's such a creative component to it. It's also true that with customs, unlike hot rods, you have a diversity of foundations to work from. You can start probably in the mid-30s, Westergaard era, we like to throw that around, up until the 40s, and then World War II hits. So you've got early 40s, 41, and then World War II hits, and then you pick up with 46, the rest of the 40s and 50s, and even a little bit into the 60s. So you've got very different body styles that you can work with. A 63 Riviera can be a custom, a 41 Ford can be a custom, a 36 Ford can be a custom. But let me tell you, if you're into hot rods, you got one or two body styles. You got 30s and early 40s. I mean, that's kind of it. So we have a bigger palette to draw from, which allows more creativity, I think.
Yeah, I still think some other cars could be hot rods. I had a guy, I do best hot rod pick at the Tri-5 Chevy Nationals. It's 55, 56, and 57 Chevy cars, trucks, Corvettes, whatever only. And I post, I'm making my trophy, and a diehard hot rod guy on Facebook says, a Tri-5 can't be a hot rod. Well, I always pick something with it's usually got like ETs or 5 spokes. It's got big and littles. It sounds right. It looks right. It may not be the perfectest paint and all that stuff. Sometimes it is, but it's just got a hot rod look. It's got the stance, and it's not one of them what I call formula builds now that they don't do anything to the body mods. They put a aftermarket chassis, their crate motor, a couple different styles of interiors, and that's kind of what I call it. Some of these big rod runs, car show things is the formula builds now, but I still think some things can be built in a hot rod vein also.
Tim, there's a large umbrella. Let's start off by saying old cars, and under that large umbrella, there's all the strata. There's all these different types. And a hot rod is almost its own umbrella. And as long as I have paid attention to any of this, which goes back to, holy cow, the 70s, people have argued about what is a hot rod, well, that's a custom, this is not a custom. Listen, everybody has their own interpretation of what those are. And after you and I are long gone, people will still be talking about that. Well, that's not really this or that, whatever. We follow at the Revival kind of an easy mantra that a traditional custom, by appearances, none of these cars are exactly the way they were, with a few exceptions. A traditional custom is a car that looks like it could have come out of Joe, Gene, Daryl, George's shop back in the day. Harry Bradley, God bless him, was an incredible designer and instructor. You may remember an issue of Custom Rodder where there was an Infinity with a shark fin on the trunk lid of an Infinity. Okay, well, he's an incredible designer, but that would not get in my show, Yeah. That's not a
that was his daily driver, wasn't it?
Pardon?
Was that Harry Bradley's daily driver?
Yes.
Or was that just a car he built? Okay.
Yeah. We also follow a document that is archived in the Automotive Hall of Fame entitled "A Definition of a Traditional American Custom Car," and it's pretty straightforward. Just follow one of the builders that I've just mentioned. So, you wouldn't think of Daryl Starbird as being traditional in the day, but in 2024 we think of his builds as traditional because they're iconic to the day. But
Yeah,
if,
he was building rocket ships back in the
well,
day.
right. Aaron Grody in Illinois is a great friend of mine, and his Atomic Pump, maybe one of the first bubble top, crazy, very well built show rods, is what I would say that car is a spectacular car, custom in every way, but it's not a traditional custom car, right? So we think if a car's just nosed and decked or shaved, that's probably all I could have afforded to do in high school if I was in the 50s. That's great. We'll let those cars in. We've had barn finds. We've had many trailer cars. We've had princesses that, that are queens, and we have people that drive their cars every day. In fact, just a few minutes ago, I had a call from California. One of 5 or 6 people that are driving their custom from California, because we say this is this kind of show. You won't be sitting next to a new pickup truck or Tri-5 or 57 Chevy.
Yeah, and you cap that event at, what is it, 200 or 250 cars?
200, and it's very intentional. It's very intentional. We like this event to be one of those events that's on your bucket list every year. Not everybody can make it every year. I get that. I'm not a promoter, even though you were kind enough to say that, and I guess to some degree you could call me that. I run my own business. This is certainly not a money maker. We try to make it not a money loser. And because of that, we don't have vendors. I don't have a swap meet. We don't have a pinup contest. It's a very different gig. I would equate it to more of a family reunion. You just haven't met all your family yet. It's a very different deal.
Totally.
And I love to go into small shows and big shows too, but we just wanted to make this event about the cars and the people, and not the other things that were going on that can go on at the show.
Yeah, like last year, me and my buddy Mike Regula, he had his car there, and I hung out with him for a while. And then, he doesn't really know any people. He's starting to do upholstery. He's got his first custom.
Right.
So I was like, follow me. I'll introduce you to some people. And we just went from tent to tent. We stopped to talk to Kurt. We went to Voodoo. We went to Lou and, all them guys and Mark Moriarty. And I'm lucky to know all these guys I've always looked up to. So we just went from tent to tent in lawn chair area and just visit with everybody until, you hang out at the same hotel. It's really cool. And the startup day, you guys always take a tour around. Have you announced what the tours are on Friday this year?
Every year on Friday morning, we leave and go to some automotive stuff. You know Indy so well. There's lots and lots of automotive things that have to do with the history in Indianapolis. In fact, before Detroit became what it eventually became, as manufacturing of the world, the top place in the world for automobiles, Indianapolis had more car builders in manufacturers in Indianapolis than Detroit. It was only when Henry Ford figured out how to move steel through the Great Lakes that suddenly everything changed and went to Michigan. So there's a lot of history here, of course, with the Indy 500 that was just last weekend, as well as the U.S. Nationals and other things. So there's lots of opportunities to do fun things. This year we have a great opportunity. We're doing something very different. We have a guest coming in to give a PowerPoint presentation at the hotel on Friday morning. He is a retired General Motors, a senior designer. When he left General Motors, he had 30 designers working under him.
Oh, wow.
And his presentation that he did, he is an instructor in Detroit at one of the design schools. His presentation is how custom cars influenced the big three in the 1950s and 1960s. So that's going to be really cool. The guy's just brilliant. He's a super friend. And after that, we'll break for lunch and go to like a neighborhood restaurant district that's 4 or 5 miles away. So kind of low key. Another year, we went to the Stutz Motor Car Factory where the Stutz Bearcats were built, and we toured a massive facility that was filled with studios with art and stained glass and antiques and graphic illustrations, where the owner had his private car collection in the hallways. Another year, we visited a private collection of 150 cars with the merry-go-round in the middle of the building. And a couple years, we visited a metal
I've been to that collection. I know which one that one is,
Yeah. Last year, we visited for the second year a metalsmith who was part of Carroll Shelby's team in California back when he was building the Shelbys, and did work for Evel Knievel, and just a super nice guy. Jerry Weeks Baker is his name.
That guy was incredible. I was blown away by his shop's just cool behind his house, hidden in the trees. But that's what's cool about Indianapolis, because there's all these, I used to work for an IndyCar team back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, or whatever. Now there's just a bunch of craftsmen around kind of doing their own thing around. There's like so many really hidden, super awesome, talented people around that town. It's
a real privilege to live here. And I think our location in Indianapolis has helped the revival. no doubt about that. The Michigan, Ohio, Illinois, Missouri, dipping down to the south and the East Coast, everybody can get here pretty easily within a day and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And so our location, the slogan for Indianapolis is Crossroads of America. Well, it
Mm-hmm.
kind of is. A lot of people can get here in a very short amount of time. Has helped us. I know that other friends of ours, yours and mine, have tried to do a custom-only show that is very difficult, and it's very difficult when, frankly, you don't have a lot of population in your contiguous states.
Mm-hmm.
It's very difficult. So we've been real fortunate. We've been very blessed that it's been a good run for us.
So what number year is this? Of course, I don't know if you noticed. I'm wearing I'm wearing one of my CC shirts for you tonight.
This is the 12th year, the 11th show. We missed one because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And I must tell you, when the show got started, my good friend Bob Davis and his son Brian and I started the show. I mean, we didn't really know if anybody would show up. I mean, 12 years ago, doesn't sound that long ago, but we were literally going through Good Guys Gazettes and Street Rodder and Custom Rodder magazines looking for, Billy Smith in Springfield, Ohio. And we were going to phone books looking for every Billy Smith in Springfield, Ohio, and calling that person and say, do you own that shop, Merck? I mean, that's a real dedication on what Bob was doing and what I was doing to the best. Our ability online is totally different today than it was then. And we didn't even know the first year if anybody would show up. We had 68, 70 cars, and Mark Moriarty and Jack Walker and some other guys like, what are we doing next year? And I was like, I didn't know there was going to be a next year. Are you sure we're going to, But everybody has a good time, and for me, that's where the real joy comes from. Everybody,
and now you kind of do it differently, like you say, on social media. I see you post, because I'm on a bunch of traditional and custom car groups on Facebook, and somebody will post a car that, like, some of us haven't seen, and you'll put, this car is invited to the classic or custom car revival. Please contact me. And it's like, now social media is an evil and also a blessing for certain things. So
just this week alone, the last 7 days, I've had 10 cars that were beautiful cars, but just did not qualify. And I spent the time to send them a nice email saying, aren't you lucky to have that 57 Chevy 4-door with Kragers? How lucky you are. It's a beautiful car, I'm sure. However, this show is this. You want to treat everybody like their family. You want to be, and everybody understands it. I jokingly say, because I'm in Indiana, in this part of the world, and from where you live, there are actually people who restore antique John Deere tractors, farm tractors. It's a big deal. And if you have an antique John Deere tractor show, don't expect to get in with your International Harvester. Okay? It's a John Deere show. If it's a Corvette show, don't think you can get in with your Corvair, even though the word is core, C-O-R. We're very specific about what we are and what we aren't. And I'll tell you this, and I really mean this. Isaac Newton, Sir Isaac Newton, the gravity guy, remember him? Sir Isaac, the apple in the head, said, if it seems like I can see further than others, it's only because I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. And I have said that to Penny Plachette and to Jerry Titus. I'm riding on their coattails, and they laugh at me for saying that. And they've been great. They are great friends, and they've encouraged what we're trying to do. But what they did in the 80s really set the foundation in California because so much magazine coverage would cover what Penny and Rich were doing. And then with Jerry and Divina, in the Midwest, and later Jim Hibbs and Paul Spillman with the Customs of America that recently got bought by Voodoo Larry and Andrew and Jim and James. They're going to make a great go of it. And so, I want to be supportive of everyone who's kind of pushing in the right direction to have fun with it. And there's always going to be a competitive component about it. But if you're, as I said earlier, if you're building one of these cars to win a trophy, you're in the wrong race. You need to be doing this for fun.
Yeah, and like I say, the custom people support each other and help each other. And
right.
I kind of see some of this. There for a while, custom cars a lot of fresh cars weren't being built. And I kind of see that there are a lot of new stuff being built because I travel a lot doing announcing, and I'll stop and see somebody that I know, never been to their shop. And I've been to a few super high-end hot rod type of shops that have never been built a lead sled, that I'm not going to say who they are, but there's a few incredible, they're going to be pretty high-end, but still traditional based. And I walked into one here south of me not too long ago, and I was blown away that they were building it. Man, it's got all the right boxes clicked. It's still a traditional Merc. The metal fit and finish is, out the charts because they build, AMBR and Riddler type of stuff, and they got a Merc going on in there. And it's pretty cool that, sometimes I talk to people that they're busy building Pro Tour cars, right? Because that's kind of where the big money is right now. Then I asked the shop owners, I was like, what do you want to be building? And they either want to be building customs or they want to build pre-48 stuff.
Good.
So it's pretty cool. They're just building Chevelles and Camaros, Mustangs, because that's kind of the next younger generation when you're trying to make money at a shop. You gotta have to go where the money's at. But man, if I had a choice, I'd just have my shop full of lead sleds, and that's all I would build if that was I ever got my way.
Yeah, absolutely. We all have to do what we have to do to make the living we want to make. And I will tell you, social media has done so much for custom cars. The information that's out there, and by nature, the photograph or the video, again, 12 years ago, 10 years ago, really was not anywhere to what it is today. And so our show really started out almost entirely with white T-shirts and white tennis shoes with grandfathers. And this year, like last year, it's more of a 50-50 split. We probably have as many guys under 50, many of them in their 30s, that this may be their first car or their first show. I've had guys come to me to say, I've never been to a custom-only show, which seems remarkable to me, but, I was going to these shows, in the very early 90s. So for me, I remember those shows. So I think there are more customs being built than ever. And the neat part is no one's crushing the old ones when they build a new car. That car just goes on to somebody else. And a car may disappear in a garage. A car of some history may disappear for a while, but no one's getting buried in those cars. I mean, honestly, those cars are still around. So, it's a good thing for all of us. It's a good thing for all of us.
So, okay, let's go back in time a little bit. I don't know if we need to get into DeLorean and go how far back, but when you were in high school, I like to guess. I'm going to steal this like the register shop guys do a thing, and sometimes they guess the people's first car. So when you were 16, what year was that?
Oh, crap.
Do you remember that far back?
School, so I don't know. I graduated in 78, so I would have been sophomore probably in high school. Okay.
So being a Midwestern guy, did you have a cool car right from the start?
Well, everybody thinks, not everybody thinks their car is cool, but I don't think the answer is probably no. Yeah, I thought it was cool because all I could afford. Can I just tell you?
Yeah.
So on my Facebook page, you'll see it. 64 Nova, Chevy 2. I put a 283 in it. And
I think I knew that. I think I've seen this. Yeah. Okay.
And because I have great hair and I'm, much thinner and have more hair and much thinner than I am now. But I had bought a set of ET spun aluminum trick rims. ET Trick was the name of the wheels. And that was at the time the drag cars were starting to run spun aluminum rims. And I got to tell you, for a small budget, it was great. The whole car cost me $350.
Oh, wow.
But it was in great shape, if you overlook the Bondo and the multiple paint jobs. And once you got a small block in it, the thing could actually run. But was it kind of a grandma's car? Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
The cool
we're close.
Yeah, the cool kids had the Chevelles, and
I wouldn't go that far because I had a Chevelle, and I don't think I was a cool kid. But I had a '64. I had a '64 Chevelle. Was my first summer car living in the Midwest, and I drove a Chevy Love in the wintertime.
Yeah.
And but it had the spun aluminum no hole center lines.
Yeah.
On it, so yeah, a little bit same type of style. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, some rake, kind of set up in the back with some hijackers in the back and hush thrush muffler. That was the big deal. But by today's standards, it seems prehistoric because I'm prehistoric. So there. But you have fun with that, and then you sell that car and make some money and go on to the next one, and before you know it, you wake up and you're like, geez, how did I get so deep into this custom thing? But I've just always loved them.
So when did you first get your first real custom or start one?
The Blue 50 Mercury I bought in 1991. I went to the Good Guys show in Indy looking for it, looking for a nice Mercury to buy, and eventually tracked that car down. It had a long history. It was chopped when I bought it and was named the Small Town Flirt. It was orange, candy tangerine orange, and very well known in the 90s. Prior to that, it was called the Yellow Rose, and I had tracked it down to the widow of the man who originally chopped it in 1959 in Savannah. I spoke to her about it, and she told me the story about her husband had chopped the car. It took me about 5.5, 6 years to kind of gut that car and go through and rewire it and do all the things that you do back in the day.
And you never changed the chop, because a lot of people buy Mercs, then they change the chop.
No, the chop was great. The chop was great.
Yeah, it does have a great chop.
By today's standards, it's not perfect. Look at me, I'm not perfect. I'm okay with not perfect. And I can guarantee you the guy who chopped it in 59 wasn't thinking in 2024 somebody will be criticizing my work, right? Of course not. But my kids have grown up with having fun in that car. I love the Candy Cobalt Blue. A local guy painted it. It did a fantastic job. And I mean, it'll run like a scalded dog. It's got a small block and a 9-inch Ford and a 700 R4. And for me, it's my go-to car for fun, no doubt about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll be the last one I ever let go of. That'll be for sure. If I let go of any.
Yeah. I always joke with my buddies. It's like, when you see how much stuff they got, and it's like, man, I can't wait to go to your estate auction. I've got buddies that just have. I got a good buddy in Illinois. He's got a building full of cars, like some original paint Tri-5s, and a couple Nomads and convertible 57s, and he don't sell nothing. He's never had anything drivable since I've known him.
Oh my gosh!
Since like 1990, I met him. I was like, man, and we tried buying a car to build a while ago. Nope, he won't part with nothing, and that's my joke with him, man.
Because he would create so much joy by letting go. I've had a couple of good friends, and just frankly, they were hoarders, and to them it was the thrill of the hunt, but they could never let go. And even when the end of their lives were coming, they just couldn't let go. It was kind of sad.
But it's not hoarding if your stuff is cool. You're just a collector. You're a collector.
The old line, I hope when I die, my wife doesn't sell all my stuff for what I told her I paid for, right?
Yeah, like we don't have any kids. We have nieces and some BMX kids that are like ours. Nobody cares how hard that I have worked to build my Hop Up magazine or my Rod and Custom collection of magazines, and how hard I work to get my Pullmax in my shop and all that type of stuff. So, it's kind of sad, but maybe I'll loosely adopt some little hot rod kid someday, and so
So after the Mercury, I told everyone I was done. I'd never do it again. You trust a lot of people that you shouldn't have trusted. You pay a lot of money to get a lot of work done. Some of the stuff you do is right. Some of the stuff you do is not right. You have to have it redone. But I was pretty insistent that I would never ever do it again. And then I went to Holland, Michigan, in 93, 94, and saw Jimmy Vaughn's Riviera, and was just melted by that car. And eventually,
what year was that? Because I think my uncle took me to that show.
Man, it was in the late 90s.
Early 90s.
Because
was it late 90s?
I'm going to guess, probably so.
Okay.
In 2005, 2004, I bought a Riviera from a police auction, and it was in really good shape. And I brought it home, and one of my neighbors said to me, "Oh, please, Kevin, tell us you're not going to cut that one up, right? It's too nice." And I had to say to my neighbors, "I'm not a car collection guy. I'm not a museum. I'm a custom guy, and that's just what we do." That car, named the Gold Top, debuted in, I guess, 05, 06. And I chopped that car with help with a friend, and learned a lot. I'd say generally, I think he probably thinks I got in his way. But I can do dirty work. If you want dirty work, Tim, I'm the guy. Call me.
Yeah. Who helped you chop that one?
And then John Cow took that project over and really turned it into a really nice build.
Yeah. Who helped you chop the top on that?
Well, I chopped it with a friend of mine, and then John noticed that there were a number of things that really could have been done differently. So he recut the car, and I got
John. Man, he built some amazing creations too. I'd love, man.
Yeah, when we finished that car, Gene had offered to paint it. Gene Winfield offered to paint it. He and I have been friends forever, and the more I dug into what was ahead of us, I had to say, Gene, if you paint this car, we will be doing our friend John Cow a disfavor, because everyone will call that a Gene Winfield car when really John Cow did all the work. It wouldn't be fair to John, you know, and
Yeah.
he agreed, and he agreed. But it was funny when I got done chopping it before John got the car. Gene said, "I know how much you've chopped that car," and I said, "No, you don't. Nobody knows how much I chopped that car. I know how much I've chopped it." And he said, "Tell me how much." And I said, "You tell me how much, Gene." And he said, "You've chopped that car 2.5 inches." And I thought, Kevin, you're talking to Gene Winfield, for goodness sakes.
Yeah.
Of course. And he said, of course, because in '64 he chopped Jim Noteboom's car, Bones' car,
Yep.
and extended the sail panels out and chopped it 2.5 inches. I had cut it to 3 inches and stood back and thought, oh my gosh, I've ruined this car. The proportions were horrible. I lifted the roof to 2 inches, and it looked like you hadn't even done anything to it. And we dropped it a half an inch, and I turned back 28 feet and walked back. I thought, that's the spot, 2.5. And it turned out later I discovered the original Riviera, named the Silver Arrow, is in a museum in Michigan. I drove up to measure it, to see it. It was fiberglass. You could knock on your knuckle, and it sounded like a bass boat. And they took it to all the dealerships, to the Buick dealerships, to get excited about it. And the roof was exactly the height that I come to the conclusion that I wanted my car to be. So I felt this weird connection with Bill Mitchell.
Yeah.
You know,
Cool.
hats and all that. First, the car was raised for production, but neat experience.
I'm a huge history GM concept car. I have a car that I'm slowly working on for myself that's a mix of what if Harley Earl and Bill Mitchell built a concept car together. So
that'd be funny. Because they were almost enemies at the time. Old generation, new generation. They did not get along very well.
So the years are a mix of when Harley was still there and when Bill was there. It's a mix of those years together. So how much was the Jimmy Vaughn car cut?
Say that again.
How much was the Jimmy Vaughn car cut? Was it cut about the same?
It was cut 2 inches, is my recollection.
Okay, built by a master, Gary Howard.
Gary Howard was the best. But don't quote me on that. No, the thing about that car was that he had a vision and he could trust Gary to do it, and they had a great relationship. And I knew Gary, but just topically, I can't say we were close friends.
Me and Gary talked a little bit. I probably talked to him, I don't know, a few months before he passed. He actually called me for a question about primer that I was using. So I was like, when did I get to this point in my life that Gary Howard calls me for a question? I was still like fanboyed out the first time I met him at a KKOA event. Still remember I was in the food line waiting to get ribs, and then when I met him, and I always loved that '60 Exotica car that he built. And he goes, "Man, I have no idea how much I chopped that. I chopped it till it looked right, and then." When Mike Young had it at Pomona a year ago, the guys that were handling the car let me come in early one morning, and I spent 45 minutes running around that car with a tape measure. So I know how much that car was chopped, and it wasn't even chopped 2 inches because those kind of look chopped anyway.
Mike was going to have the car brought to Indy at last year's show, and he and I spoke on the phone, and I was just over the moon. I just loved that car, and then he called me and said, "Listen, I've had a bad health diagnosis. I don't think I'm going to be able to make it." But what a great reputation he had. And you and I have been blessed to be in this thing at a crazy window of time, because we've become friends with the foundation of this goofy passion. You know, to say that we've both been friends with George and Gene and certainly Joe and Gary Howard and DeRoses and Daryl Starbird, and I met Sonny Morse a few years ago, and Paul Bragg and Jerry Wiesner. These people contributed so much to the foundation of traditional custom cars. And with just a couple of exceptions, Gene and Daryl, I'm sorry to say we've lost them, and it's a real privilege to have been able to call these guys friends.
Yeah, in my mind, these guys that we're honored to call friends, and I don't have all of their cell phones because some of them don't have cell phones, but some of them I do.
Right.
And it'd be like a basketball player being friends with Jordan. I mean, really, that's how I look at it.
Right. I agree.
Starbird called me the other day and they wanted me to help him on something, and I've got to know Gene and all those custom guys. It's pretty rad.
Gene has stayed at my house, and my kids think of him almost as a grandfather. And I think I will never know anyone who has more friends and thinks more fondly than Gene Winfield. I mean, it's just the nature of his personality.
And it's crazy. He's is he 96 now, and he's still running around, seeing people going to shows, dancing. Last year at the KKOA event, he was dancing when we got tired and went to bed. Yeah.
I had
Incredible.
a couple years ago in Salina, and he said, I only really want to be with positive people. Life is too short with people that are negative. And I could not have said it better. We all have friends that look at glasses as half empty, and you need to be optimistic and say, let's push things forward. And that's why he always says, every day's a school day. There's something to be done. Get up and go enjoy life. And whatever his circumstances are, I think the world of him, and I know we all wish him the best. But to know those people, to have had some relationship with them for both of us, and many of us have had those experiences, it's a real important part of who we are, and probably some of our tastes, in cars as well.
Yeah.
Well, Balon and I were good friends who I didn't really love his taste in cars, but he was a great guy.
One of my good Gene stories was we had him on. We recorded him a year and a half ago, so I haven't re-listened. But a week or so ago, his interview went up live on our platforms, and I was at a hotel at a car show. I think it was a Salina, maybe, or it might have been. I don't know. They all blur together. Anyway, I was eating breakfast, with a breakfast buffet, and I come down and I sit at his table with him and Johnny D and a few other guys, and just honored they would allow me to have breakfast with them as a super fan, And he looked at me and he shook his finger. He goes, if you have bacon, and I don't recommend it, only eat 2 pieces.
That's right.
I looked at him right in the eye and ate 4 pieces of bacon right in front of him. He was just chuckling at me, and it's going to haunt you, he says. But him and Starbird both eat very healthy.
He's cautioned about diet with some friends as well.
Yeah.
He said, he told me his mom was the first real health food nut before there was even a term, of health food. And it's obviously served him well.
Yeah, and I've went grocery shopping with Starbird more than a few times, and he reads all the labels. And he buys, 100% juice, no concentrate, real food, real, deli breads that are make there, and you can't argue with him. That's almost 91. So I've kind of changed how I eat after hanging out with those old custom guys. So
there's something to it that you don't. I hate to say it, but you don't see farm animals eating donuts and bags of French fries. But somehow,
but if you're with Starbird, 99% chance you're going to have ice cream before you go to bed, though. That's his weakness.
It's a calcium thing.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. So after the Rivy, what did you do after that?
My wife.
Is that when the caddy came?
My wife noticed about every 6 years the bug bites again, and what I've never had the courage to say to her is the bug was always biting. It just took me 6 years to get over.
Okay, well, stop for a second. How many years has the Cadillac been built?
Well, the Cadillac was finished in 18. You're old. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like it's time for another one.
Yeah, we debuted it in 18 and 19. But the 36 Ford was next.
Okay. Yeah, I forgot about that one. Yeah.
2012, Gary and Dylan Brown's Metal Mods, now in upstate New York, built that car. I found the car in San Diego. Trace Edwards did a show devoted to customs in Long Beach for 2 years.
Yep.
And I saw the car down there, left a note in his car, and he didn't get back with me. And I chased him down, and some hard work was done. But around here, you can't find 36 anywhere. They're just rusted away. And if you find them, they've been restored with a tweed interior and wire wheels. And, of course, I was going to throw all that away. That car, that car ended up being on the cover of Rod and Custom. It was a Good Guys Custom of the Year finalist. In its day, it was very, very unique because it was a completely finished car, but it had what we would call suede paint, but it really wasn't suede. It was a combination of a metallic pearlescent blue with a flat clear over it. And that car is a ton of fun and to drive and be in. And that car's been has always done very well wherever it is. Gary and Dylan Brown just did a fantastic job with that.
Didn't they help a little bit, like under hood sheet metal or something? They did something on the Rivy too, didn't they?
Gary and Dylan did sheet metal under the hood of the Riviera. Again, the frustrated car designer guy here stood out in the garage in the middle of the winter, late at night, looking at that giant Riviera under the hood, and thought, we've got to find something to decorate this pigsty. And so I figured out how to use fenders off of another Riviera to insert into the center. of that. And then Gary and Dylan built the entire 36. And they also did some sheet metal work on the Blue 50 Mercury as well.
Yeah. Which I think those guys, Brown's Metal Mods, Gary, I have worked with him personally. I met him when he worked for Dave Tucci.
Right.
Him and Tom Opoff that runs
Right.
Saltwork Speed, they both worked for Dave Tucci.
Right.
And they took a long weekend one time when I was doing a car, and they come and helped me knock out engine compartment, firewall, trans tunnel in like 3 days. And Gary's just one of them. He doesn't care about really promoting too hard. He doesn't do a lot on social media. He does a little bit.
No.
But, man, you talk about a talent and a guy that if you let him go, he'll come up with a different idea of something that nobody's ever seen before.
Yeah.
He was part of some really awesome projects at Tucci's, and what a craftsman, both him and his brother, and what a fun time they are. What a messed up sense of humor they have. That's why I get along with them so good. But, yeah, Brown's Metal Mods, what talented dudes. Yeah. They used to be in Indianapolis after they worked with Tucci in New York. Now they moved back. I think it was pretty much when Gary had his baby, didn't he? They moved back to be closer to family.
Gary wanted his son to have the same experience growing up in rural upstate New York. And, I mean, he's literally not very far from the Canadian border. I mean, he's an hour and a half north of Niagara Falls. The Adirondacks, or what I'm trying to remember. I mean, he loves to hunt. So, he told me stories about he and his brother would hike, 15 miles in the dead of winter on the first day of hunting, November the 30th, and it's already like Antarctica up there. And he fell into the creek that he's walked over every year on the same stone, but slipped and got soaking wet, and it's 20 degrees below zero. And I'm like, and I said, "What do you do?" He said, "Take all my clothes off." And Dylan, his brothers, are there making a fire, and they spend the night there trying to dry his clothes out. And I'm thinking, wow, I just went to the steakhouse last night and got a steak. It wasn't that, but anyway, super guy. Both of them just great guys and good friends. Good friends. Super
So I would love to get Gary and Dylan on here. And I don't know if that'll happen because some guys don't like to do interviews, but I might need you to lean on them a little bit because I would love to get on here and get their story out there too.
I'll make sure they know that's happened. It's funny, and you'll appreciate this. Many builders can't help by nature but compare themselves to other builders. It's nature. If you're an Olympic athlete, you compare yourself to other Olympic athletes, right? Mm-hmm. And they tend to have very strong opinions about each other. And when Mike Borma of the Gas X Garage and Gary met, it was like two brothers from another mother. And geographically, one's in Michigan, one's in upstate New York. They both have very different personal backgrounds, but have such extraordinary skill sets that when they first met together, I couldn't hardly get them apart. I'm like, Mike, we need to leave. We need to get back to Indiana. So.
And I met Mike through you when you had the Caddy. I'd known who he was and followed some of his work, but that was the first time I met him. Yeah, he's a great guy too.
Yeah.
So, Mike, tell a little bit about this Caddy project, which when you debuted it at Detroit, right?
Yes.
Some guy took a video of it, and it still is like breaking the internet. It's got like 1 million views, 1.5 million or more or something, doesn't it?
27 million is the number.
Is it?
27 million. That's a quarter of the Super Bowl worldwide.
Wow.
Yeah, and certainly a lot of other people shot it. That car, that car's just done extraordinarily well. It won a top 10 Street Rider Magazine of the Year, Winfield Top 6, Builder's Choice in Louisville. It was a Riddler contender, of course. The Agostino gave it a Crystal Award. Steve Autos Restorations out in California and in Oregon gave it their pick of the show, and lots of other accolades. But gosh, it's been in USA Today. I didn't even know this. Chuck Ferrarnus shot it for Street Rodder, that is owned at the time was owned by the media group of Motor Trend, and eventually got shared on Motor Trend, and then they sell it to ESPN and a bunch of other or USA Today and other news feeds. But I've always thought that car was gorgeous as a coupe, but that car was never made as a coupe other than a sedanette with a swept back rear end. A traditional trunk two-door car was never built. So that car as a convertible is just breathtaking. There's no doubt about that. but a convertible.
But it wasn't a convertible to start with. That's the kind of the story that.
I'm sorry, say that again.
It says it was not a convertible to start with.
That is correct. So to buy a convertible, here's somebody calling me about the revival. I'll turn them down. To buy a convertible in 1947, World War II was just over, right? World War II was over for the United States halfway through 46. So to have a car like that, after World War II, nobody was buying a new car. Nobody had the money to buy a Cadillac, and no one had the money to buy a Cadillac convertible. It's just unheard of. So the hardcore Cadillac guys today, they pretty much know where all those convertibles are, because it's such a small number, and they covet them. So to buy a convertible, which would have been so much easier, you're talking 80 to 100,000 to get started, and of course we were going to cut it all up. So I started playing with the idea of extending a 2-door to a 4-door, and I did my research, and I'm pretty good at this. I did my research and found out that the fastback, or the sedanettes, doors are 7 inches larger. So I thought, well, if I could just find a set of 7-inch doors off a sedanette, then I wouldn't be grafting on a piece of metal to a front door. And we just cut 7 inches off. And of course, I'm doing all this pretty amateur. I'm doing this with a ruler. I mean, I'm not doing this the way it ought to be done with software. And so I measured the roof, and I was very aware of a convertible that had been built principally in California for Palle Johansson by a friend of mine out in California. And I was looking at their pictures, and the more I thought about it, there's no reason why we couldn't do this. So I got out the Sharpie markers, I'm just telling you, and the measuring tape, and drew the car out and sent it to Mike Barma, and sent him the picture of a stock 47 4-door. And he called me back and goes, geez, this is very doable. Why hasn't someone thought of this? And I said, well, because nobody wants to ruin a really nice Cadillac and cut it up like I do. And he laughed. So I found the car in Minneapolis. I called Mark Moriarty, who lived very close to where the car was stored. And it was a mom and pop car museum, like Tim Strange's Auto World. Come see the old cars for $5 on the side of the highway. And it was the son who was running it, who was in his 60s. And his ground was probably worth more as an Applebee's, than no one get the highway to see a car museum. And he had all these cars. Many of the cars were for sale, but they were kind of undesirable cars. But they all had sold signs on them, except his Cadillac. And it's big. I mean, it's like a stock one, and it's like a small school bus. They're really big. And I said to the guy, I said, you know why all these other cars have sold, but this one's still sitting here? And he goes, why? And I said, look at it. It's got awful ugly. Nobody wants to own that thing. It's hideous. And he's like, I know. And then the negotiating began, right? That's how you buy the car. The next weekend, it was at Mike's shop. And I told my buddy Ron Hensley, let's go up and see the car. If you'll come up there with me, we're going to go up to Mike's. And I was kind of looking forward to sitting in it again. I drove it around and stuff. But I mean, you're kind of driving, a boat. And I get there, and there's a big black roof on 2 sawhorses sitting in front of the shop. And I said to Ron, I think that's my roof. And it was. So we extended the catwalk in towards the cab so that the roof came down and then hit to the trunk, as opposed to a big beehive. You don't want that big. They had to cut all the package tray area back and move that forward. Of course, nose deck shaved. We extended the skirts. We modified the whole front windshield, so it looked like it was from a convertible. The top doesn't lift off because it would need all that inner structure that convertibles have that regular cars don't. And frankly,
it would take 6 grown men to lift that top off. It was a lift off.
Oh yeah. And I like a quiet car. I like a quiet car. So I wanted to be able to drive the thing and have the roof on. The back window that came from Sid Shavers actually opens up. It's like you see a lot of it on 32 Fords, but he makes one, a larger version. And we got lucky. It's a low mile car with 47,000 miles. So it's a 47 Cadillac with 47,000 miles. The engine's never been opened up. And when you start that thing, it's so quiet, you can't hear it. I mean, it's just magnificent. And Mike went through the whole thing and added a power steering pump, and we put had the steering wheel remade. to match a GM column. But other than that, it's quite a handful. I jokingly say that we've applied for our own zip code because it's so doggone big. It's just and when it came time to paint, we took it all the way up to Gary Brown's place in Fort Layden, New York, and Gary and Dylan went through and did all the body prep, and then painted the car for us. That project,
Gary's good spraying candy too.
yeah, and I have to give credit. I always do. That project was only slowed down really by the interior guy, as you can imagine, happens. But that whole project was about 14 months.
Oh wow,
Oh,
that's
wow.
pretty quick. Yeah.
I'm telling you, the Gas Axe Garage and Brown's Metal Mods know what they're doing. You know,
But see, as a builder, I'm going to say that means your checks were always on time too, because that's
Absolutely.
when I talk to people, they're like, "Man, this guy's not working on my car." I go, "Well, have you paid him?"
Yeah.
You know, because
Yeah.
some people like to talk bad about a shop when they got a car sitting in the corner, but sometimes they're not paying their bills.
I tell shops, I'm going to pay you every 2 weeks because I want you to be happy, and I want to be happy that you're happy because I'm getting work done. And at one point, Mike said, "I can get this car done quicker than you can write checks for." And I said, "Then slow down. I'm not that affluent." Okay, slow down. And with both those guys, like with you, a client may come and have a harebrained idea, and sometimes you got to talk them down, and settle them down. But with these guys, you bring in the right people and the right jobs, and they elevate the game. So that car is it's beautiful, not because it's mine, but I was able to put together the right people, the right game plan, the right time. That car really was not done. And one of my good friends, Bob Newman, the Burgundy 51 Mercury that you've seen, said, do you have any idea how many people this is going to inspire? And I was like, I didn't really understand that. Well, since then, a lot of other cars have come out the last 3-4 years, with Carson style tops. So if we added a little bit of fun to the game, so be it. And then the last car of the garage full is the Bob Newman 51 Mercury, the Burgundy car out of Michigan that was on the March 93 Custom Router magazine. Super dear friend, had a bad health diagnosis a number of years ago. And I would drive up to Michigan regularly just to have lunch with him on Saturdays. And we had very much the same type of artistic taste. And when that car came out, my blue Mercury was almost done. And they looked like they were twins. And when the opportunity came to acquire that car, I jumped at it. And so it's been a real honor to be able to have that car and to enjoy that car as well.
So you said your first Merc was your last one, and then you've done all these other ones in an 8-year cycle. Is there a thought process? Is there another car, even if you may not build it, is there a car that you would like to build? Like, I've always wanted.
Oh, sure there is. But Tim, I won't tell you.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
you can just say yes because sometimes you don't want to let secrets out because sometimes that's why some people give me a hard time. Another traditional custom guy the other day, I was trying to explain to some people that was struggling, some older guys online about what's a podcast? How do I listen to that? And the one guy goes, I just wish you just show pictures of your cars that you're working on. I was like, well, I normally don't show pictures of my cars until we're done, and we don't let out a lot of info because we had back in the days when you get started on a car, when the magazines would run the artwork, well, I had a couple people steal some ideas of what we were doing. So you kind of got to keep some stuff. You can just say yes, and I know if it'll be a custom.
The answer is yes. But I will also tell you that I've been fortunate to put these cars together at the right time for those cars. That 36 that I bought had been seen in California, but was one of the very first, what I would say, modern tail draggers. But it was very, very rough. I mean, it was really rough. I mean, I've replaced just about every single thing on that car. And it was army green and had no trunk and had no windows. Parts of it were just disgusting. I mean, really a mess. But when Gary and Dylan finessed that thing when we brought it together, it was really the beginning of what I'm going to say. And again, that would have been 2006 when people started noticing tail draggers in a more prominent way. So it was the right car at the right time. And the Cadillac, the same thing. No one in the U.S. has built a car like that. John D'Agostino's just finished his 41 with a partner. And oh my gosh, it's staggering. I mean, it's just absolutely beautiful. It also took them 7 or 8 years. God bless him for that. And the Riviera was kind of the same thing, right time, right car. I think it's just so easy to ruin a really nice car. You know that we've all seen customs that square headlights and 80s graphics. To me, again, it goes back to the artistic component. Jack Walker came up to my 36 once in Detroit when he saw it in Detroit the first time. Didn't know it was my car. Said to a friend of his, "That looks like a Kevin Anderson car." For me, it was the greatest compliment because there was no way he could have known it was my car. But I'm not much into pinstripes and rat fink and stuff on the side of the car. I try to let the sheet metal do the work. So either a curse or a blessing, you get to pick.
Yeah. So I let people know that I have that weird concept car, and then sitting out in the barn behind the house, I have a 40 Merc that I'm gathering parts for. So
there you go.
But yeah, so that's my someday that I hope I get to my 40 Merc, unless somebody comes along and wants me to build it for them. But that hasn't happened yet. But
well, it's good to have a dream. A good friend of mine said customs are like a dream, but who am I to judge you by your dreams? Right.
And I'm not as old as you, but I am getting old enough that now on my dry erase board in my shop, I have cars written down and what I want to get to for myself if I don't get to build them for a customer. And I had a couple cars that weren't on that list, like a dream car. So I was like, I just want to sell them. So I sold a couple off of projects that I couldn't find a customer for. And so you find when you get older, you got to know how to fine tune. It's like you realize. Like my buddy that has a building full of cars that he's never finished. I was like, come on, man, sell all but two and then take that money and build your car so you can enjoy them while you're still here.
Yeah, it's a predicament. John Mellencamp, one of the lines in one of John Mellencamp's songs is, and I'm paraphrasing, it's rough when you realize there's more days behind than in front of your cart. Like,
and we all appreciate you not actually trying to sing the song. we appreciate that it's not.
Right,
I mean, we can make this. We can make it the Kevin Anderson karaoke hour if you want to do that.
Yeah, that'll be at the revival later.
Yeah. So okay, we've been talking for about an hour. We try to keep them an hour. Sometimes we go crazy. And man, when I did Starbird, of course, we were at his house. We did 3 hours with him, so we had to break it up in different sections. So
if you want to edit
again,
thing I said, that's okay too.
Say that again.
I said, and if you want to edit me out of this entire episode, that's all right too.
Now we don't. We have not, of all the episodes we have done, we have not edited anything. There's a lot of podcasts out there, and a lot of them have multiple camera angles and lots of editing and all this stuff. And we just do it natural. When we did Rob Ida's, we had a couple audio things where the words were like sticking and dragging out, and we just put it out because it's more about the story and the people and getting their stories out there and recorded and out there for as long as these platforms are out there than it is about, oh, yeah, their sound was perfect, their lighting was perfect. It's more about the story of everybody.
Yeah, and I must tell you, it was not my intent to blather on about cars, but the revival, I'll tell you in closing, is there's no entrance fee to see that. The public's always welcome. It's a great time, and I always tell everyone at the end of awards, this is not Kevin Anderson's show. It's your show. Everybody's done different things to get their car here, get here and have fun. And I just hope that everybody can continue to have a good time. And just like what you're doing, never thought I'd be doing this. My wife certainly didn't sign up to do a car show with me 35 years ago. I can guarantee you that. And what you're doing with this to help spread a common communication with custom folks, it's really meaningful, Tim. So a big pat on the back to you for doing this.
Next. So, I know we're not going to get 10,000 listeners on every episode because, again, not everybody's custom guys, but we just do it because me and Carrie both love it, and we love all the people that we get on here. And we're not just doing custom people. We recorded one that'll come out after yours.
Right.
We got a rock and roll guy and a heavy metal band, but he's also a custom guy. He's got a Mercury, so we had him on there, and we're going to do some BMX people. But right now, most of it has been custom based because I don't really see, other than Murpho, which we're going to get Murpho and Colette on here. They're doing a lot of custom guys, which we're friends with them. So we're going to interview each other to help each other out.
Yeah.
And custom people are just,
Well, I just
so again, give them the dates of the show.
Yeah, June 6, 7, 8. Really, it's a Friday, Saturday show. June 7 and 8. And all the information you need to know is at customcarrevival.com. Same name on Facebook and Instagram, Custom Car Revival. pretty straightforward stuff. We've got a full roster of 200 cars coming from 35, 36 states, Canada, Florida, Texas, the Bronx, Brooklyn, 5 cars from California. So you'll have a guy who sounds like Tony Soprano talking to someone from Tennessee or Georgia who sounds totally different. And then you have people from the far northwest or far north that sound like they're cheese lovers in Wisconsin, and everything in between. And everybody has a great time with it. So yeah, it's great.
So I want to thank you, Kevin Anderson, not only for taking the time for coming on the Strange Motion Way, but thank you for what you do. Again, he doesn't do this custom car revival as a business. There's no vendors. There is T-shirts. We'll put a picture of the posters that he had available that our great friend John Jackson came to last year and photoshopped me and Chris Ryan on. I think it's those guys from the Moonshine Show or something like that sitting on a porch.
Right. That's right.
And I can't go to a car show, no matter where I am around the country, that somebody comes up and asks me, "Do you have one of them posters?" So they could have sold. They could have sold. But the story on these, John Jackson likes to do really poorly Photoshop stuff to make fun of people. I mean, he's a great guy. He was there and did a video last year and put on YouTube a little coverage of the event. And so you got a hold of that and printed out big posters instead of just John had it on social media. And then you called me because I was giving an award out and he's like, "Hey, man, I need you to come up to the merch tent because we got to ask you about your award, get your paperwork ready, what order we're going to do this." I'm like, "Okay." So then I walk into the tent and I see phones out. I'm like, "Okay, Kevin's a prankster." Yep. So I got something coming here. And I never met your daughter. I never met you. Got two.
My daughter's friend, but yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then she's holding the poster backwards and she goes, "Oh my God, are you Tim Strange?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I am. Just rip the Band-Aid off. Let's get it over with." Yeah. She goes, "Will you sign my poster?" And there's like 15 people recording this. And there's the poster of me and Chris as moonshine guys with shirtless and bellies hanging out.
He's asking for your autograph.
Yeah. And then you had them up on the table. You had like 10 of them printed. You had them for $100. I think you're a little greedy on that. But you go, "Oh, at the end of the day, you can have all these back." Well, I went over there to get them. There was only 3 left. So there's 7 floating around for future appearances. Yeah.
The fact is, I was paying people money to take them away. They weren't $100. We just said that to make you feel good.
Well, yeah. But yeah, I ended up with, I thought I was getting all 10 out of there. And I got 3. Yeah. And I got one. Yeah. I got one to Chris, and Chris didn't make it last year. There's 10. There's 7 floating around out there. I think.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's all about the fun. It's all about.
Yeah. So again, thanks, Kevin Anderson. Make sure you all, if you can, go to Indianapolis, and hopefully this will go up pretty quick. And when this thing goes live, it'll be about a week and a half, a little over a week. So you still got time to plan to get to Indianapolis and go to the Custom Car Revival and hang out with all the cool custom dudes. So thanks again, Kevin Anderson, for being on the Strange Motion Way.
Thanks, Tim.
Yep, we'll see you.
The Strange Motion Way podcast, brought to you by Royal Purple Synthetic Oils.
Royal Purple premium synthetic motor oils and high-performance chemicals have been designed to improve performance in all conditions and provide cleaner operation, better mileage, and decreased oil change frequency. That means less oil changes. With products available for your gasoline and diesel engines, Royal Purple is the obvious choice for your performance needs. Drive with Royal Purple, the synthetic expert.
Hey, welders, ready to upgrade your gear and save some serious dough in the process? The Miller Build with Blue savings and rebate program has you covered. Find amazing deals and cashback rebates on a wide range of Miller products, from welders to plasma cutters and everything in between, all backed by our 3-year warranty. Don't let this opportunity pass you by. Take advantage of the Miller Build with Blue program now. Visit us online or stop by your nearest Miller distributor today to start saving.
Another great episode of The Strange Motion Way with another great custom industry person, Kevin Anderson, a custom, I don't know how to say that, aficionado. You know what that word is?
Efficient?
No, aficionado. It's like somebody that's really into something. So yeah, that's what he is. Has some amazing.
Really into customs.
Yeah, not efficient. I suppose he is efficient.
Why even try to make up a word? Just say,
It's not
a guy that's really into
not a
customs.
made up word. You went to Rova.
Yeah, okay.
And promoter of the Custom Car Revival in Indianapolis. Make sure you get there second week of June. The second week of June. Friday, Saturday.
8th and 9th.
Yep.
Perfect.
And really
Indianapolis.
thank Kevin for taking the time for sitting down with us. And next week, we're varying out of our normal custom car and hot rod guests, even though he has a Porsche and an amazing kind of modern build Mercury.
Which is a custom, so we're not getting away from customs.
But he's got a pretty amazing day gig.
He's got a pretty downright awesome day gig.
Yeah, and been doing it for a long time. We get into that, with his history and everything. We have Jerry Horton, the guitarist and backing vocals of the band Papa Roach.
Tune in next week for an amazing episode of the Strange Motion Way podcast.